Hey guys, good morning. It is Friday in October, and I thought I would bring you guys along with me as I'm in the kitchen. We have quite a bit to do, kitchen and garden. Well, thank you for bringing that in for me. You found that. Thanks. We have quite a bit to do. I have kombucha to brew, we have sweet potatoes to dig, we have to do school, and I'm prepping sourdough class, our folk school class. We hold that once or twice a month where we teach in-person classes and hands-on skills. And so usually fall lands us right in the middle of like bread baking. And sourdough is a really popular class that we have here on our homestead. Just a simple sourdough, white sourdough starter, white sourdough bread. And so that's what I'm cooking for breakfast this morning. Okay, so while that's cooking, I'm gonna brew some green tea for some kombucha. If you're not familiar with what kombucha is, it is a fermented tea. You could use green tea, you could use black tea. Most people use black tea. I prefer green tea because I like the mild flavor of it. It looks like this. These are called scobies. It's a symbiotic union of yeast and bacteria. Mine are looking a little funky. Trust me, they are okay. We've been drinking this. Usually it's to here, and usually I do a second ferment. That means I pour the kombucha off after 7 to 14 days and put it in another bottle, like a swing top bottle like this. And fill it with fruit, grapes, peaches, apples, ginger, like any spices that you want to add. But recently, my girls just like it plain. And so I'm gonna brew some more. This one's like a baby SCOBY. See that little baby SCOBY? We started that because this tea is eventually going to be your starter for the next batch. You always wanna save a little bit for the next batch. And if you can see, it's kind of like apple cider vinegar with the mother. There's like these little stringy things. And all that is starter for the next batch, but you can start another baby SCOBY just from the starter. And that's what my Sawyer did, my youngest daughter. So she has a little baby SCOBY going. And I need to brew some fresh tea. So my recipe for my sweet tea calls for 3 quarts of water per batch. And then you bring that to a boil. Add about 5 to 6 green tea bags. Again, you can do black. Let that steep for 15 minutes. And then add sugar. And I like to add, my recipe calls for a cup to a cup and a half. I like to add 2 cups because the more sugar you add at the beginning, the better fermentation you're gonna get on that second ferment. You're gonna get that fizzy kombucha that everyone loves from the grocery store. Making your own kombucha it's so much more economical and affordable, and it's really the basics of brewing sweet tea every 7 to 14 days. So the more SCOBYs you have in your jar, the quicker it's going to ferment. The warmer it is in your house, the quicker it's going to ferment. And now we're in fall, my house is kind of cool, and I don't have many SCOBYs in that jar, so it's gonna take a good 14 days for it to, for that tea to ferment. I'm gonna actually do a double batch because I'm gonna feed Sawyer's baby SCOBY and get that one started. My girls are loving kombucha, and kombucha is really just like, everyone thinks it's like a gut health drink, which it is, but the lactic and the acetic acids in it are really great for detoxification and detoxifying the liver. And so spring, fall, those are really great times to detox. And so do I always have kombucha on the counter? Not necessarily. It kind of goes in spurts, trying to keep all the things alive. Sourdough starter, kefir grains, kombucha SCOBYs. It can be quite, I don't know, not daunting, but just remembering to like feed all those things. Yeah, could take a lot of brain capacity. It's not that it's difficult to do. These things are not difficult at all. It's just remembering to feed them. It's just keeping another mouth alive on the counter. So I'm gonna put this on and boil this and get to cleaning up my kitchen and doing all the things. Okay, well, that's boiling. I'm gonna prep my starters for tomorrow, start the process of getting all the sourdough starters ready for folk school. If you are local or if you are in the tri-state area close to Pennsylvania, come take a class, a hands-on class. I think YouTube is amazing for learning. That's how my husband and I learned, but I craved in-person community. Like sitting down with another sister or another woman that has gone before me, knows how to make starter, knows how to can, knows how to like cure meat and all the homestead things. I craved that when we started homesteading, and that was like 15, 16, we're almost married 16 years. And so that was a long time ago, and I feel like it's becoming a thing now. And so we've created that, and we have that in our home where we teach these classes once a month. So I'll leave the link below if you want to travel in. There's beautiful Airbnbs in our area. We are in a little bit of a touristy area because of the Amish community. A lot of people come in just to see the Amish. There's great restaurants and a beautiful city. So if you like the country, if you like the city, you can come and stay and just and visit. So I'll leave that link below. But tomorrow's folk school class is simple sourdough. When I started with sourdough, I struggled. It's a funny story because I was on a Facebook, like a crunchy moms group, and I met this girl. We were going back and forth, like having conversation, and she had a rye sourdough starter, and I had kefir grains. Some people say kefir, it's kefir. I'm trying to change my language because I always say kefir, but I guess it's the region that you're in. But if you're not familiar, kefir grains are, again, a symbiotic union of yeast and bacteria, but those grains, they look like cottage cheese and they ferment milk. There's water kefir grains too. I prefer the cultured milk. It's like yogurt on steroids pretty much. So I gave her kefir grains. We met at a Walmart parking lot over by the like Amish buggy parking, and we exchanged sourdough starter and kefir grains, and then a beautiful friendship formed. But I struggled. I was like, okay, I have this. What do I do now? And all the recipes I found were weighing ingredients, and I had little babies at the time and toddlers, and I was frustrated, and I was like, this is too confusing. I killed multiple starters. I think she gave me maybe 2 of them, and I killed them. And then I asked my cousin, who was a pastry chef at the time, I was like, can you please teach me a really simple way to make sourdough without weighing ingredients on a scale? And so he drove 3 hours, and he taught me, and he brought me another rye sourdough starter that I kept alive. And I was still a little frustrated with his method, but it got me started. And so I watched YouTube videos. I kind of just made it work. I know I punched the dough multiple times, and my husband said, love is the first ingredient, remember that. But it would be late nights, me trying to figure it out. And so once I figured it out, I was like, I need to teach people this. I need to teach women this. And so I've been hosting sourdough classes for about 4 years. Yep, 4 years. And I had a course on Teachable. I took it down because I'm going to revise it, and I'm going to revise my booklet as well. So make sure you're on my mailing list. If you're not local and can't make it to a folk school, but you're like, I'm frustrated, I kill so many starters, what do I do? Make sure you're on that mailing list, because when it is released, which I'm planning the beginning of 2024, but it may be sooner. I would love for it to be sooner, maybe around Christmas time, for that course and booklet to be available, to walk you through step by step how to care for a starter, how to make sourdough bread, like how to make the dough, like all the science behind it, all the details, but in a very simplified way so that you can have success. Because that's what we want. We want to put good bread on the table, right? That tastes good, that's not dense, that's not like inedible. We want good bread. So from there, I said I would never use a white starter, but then an acquaintance from Instagram she's local. She's like, do you want some of this starter? It's from a French monastery from like the 1800s. It's just been passed down, passed down, passed down. And I was like, absolutely. And so I'm hooked on a white starter now. I just feel like it's a lot more forgiving, and you can make pastries and like cinnamon rolls with the discard, pancakes with the discard that taste good, that don't have that like rye flavor. And so I still keep a rye starter because I do like the more earthy flavor of it, but I don't use it as often. We really love the white starter. And so that's what I teach with now. I used to teach with the rye starter, but again, I want success for my students. So I have a bucket, like a basket, not a basket, a tub of starter, because I taught this at our co-op class just the other day, and I have all this discard, and discard is essentially the inactive form of your starter. It just needs to be fed. When you are fed, you have energy, right? You are like ready to be productive. That is essentially the same as a sourdough starter. So you feed it the same flour that it's always been fed with. So this is a white starter, so I feed it with a white flour. I use King Arthur organic white flour. I do not mill my own grains. That is a future like skill that I want to learn. I keep asking for a food, like a grain grinder for Christmas, but no one's listening. I think it's been like 3 years. I'm like, they're like, what do you want for Christmas? Like, a grain grinder so I can mill my own grains. Every Christmas, no grain grinder. I know they're expensive, so I'm feeling hopeful maybe this year, because I would love to learn that, because there's so much more nutrition when you grind your own grain, and again, it's more economical too. But for this purpose, I'm using King Arthur organic white. And so what I have here is all my inactive starters. See how it's kind of deflated? There's no air bubbles. And so when you feed it, the yeast, the bacteria, they feed off of the fresh flour. And that's creating carbon dioxide, and you get those big glutinous, yeasty bubbles that, you know, that's what it does when you feed it. So let me find my, there's my measuring cup. Our cow is out, so that's why I'm a little distracted. Let me go check, make sure everything's okay. Yep. So this is our 6-month-old calf. And she knows how to get out. If I were to open this door, she would run right back in her pen. So I think Grace went down to get some grain for her to get her back in her pen. She sees her come in, watch. This is like a daily thing, because our electric isn't working and we need to figure out why it's not working, especially if we want to go away this fall. So, sorry, I was a little distracted. Where were we? All right, so essentially when you have a starter, okay, if you use it the day before, you're taking enough out that you can just add flour and water to your starter. But if you don't use it, it's gonna be pretty full and you'll wanna discard. That's where the term discard comes from. You're taking some of that inactive starter out of your jar, making room for new flour and water to come in. You mix it up and you're leaving room for expansion, because that starter is just gonna grow and grow and grow. And if you don't leave room in your jar, it's just gonna explode all over the counter. And plus, the more starter you have, the more flour and water you have to add. So I always start with 1 cup of starter, and then I add equal parts. 1 cup of flour, and then I do just a little bit less water, because I like a thick starter. That's my tip. Always start with a thick starter, because as it ferments, it's gonna get a little bit more runnier, and no one likes a runny starter. So a thicker starter is best. So I'm actually gonna do a 1/4 cup, actually a 1/2 cup of starter, because I'm gonna have to feed these again tomorrow morning right before class, or like 4 hours before class. So I'm gonna do, and I don't really measure. I do measure, because mason jars, I know everyone uses Weck jars, or a lot of people on social media use Weck jars, but I like mason jars because the measurements are right here on the side, and you can see exactly how much starter you have and how much you start with. So that's a 1/2 cup. So I'm just gonna fill these up, And then I'll feed equal parts. So half a cup of flour, half a cup of starter, and then a quarter cup of water. A little bit more. Okay, so I'm gonna start feeding my flour now. Let me just bring you guys a little closer. There. So a half a cup of flour to a half a cup of starter. Do that for all 6. So my classes are quite small, which is perfect. I love that. 6 is the 6 to 7 is the max I can have at my classes for the space I have. And if you've been following along, we are working diligently to get our barn renovated. It is quite the process. We're at the stage of sewer right now and working with the state on sewer and being allowed to put in a new septic system, which there are so many regulations that is super frustrating. With prayer, we know that the Lord, He wants us to be teaching. He wants us to be equipping people with these skills so people are empowered to know how to take back their health, how to eat healthier for their body, because what we are being fed at the grocery store is just deteriorating our health. And so we know that is the vision He put on our heart when we moved into this property, and it's been a 10-year, even more than that, we've been here. 10 years. It's been 10 years in May. It's been a 10-year dream of mine to be able to host classes, and we made that happen in the garage by renovating it, and then people are also in our kitchen, but we want to make it a little bit more professional and just keep business separated from our home life, and to be able to house more people too, maybe not a ton, but maybe just double the size, and be able to have 12 people around the table with equipped with a kitchen, and we've had so many of you that have just outpoured and donated. We have a donate button at the bottom through PayPal just to help with those beginning stages, because honestly guys, we just got the bill we had to have our well tested for nitrates because that's a contingent thing for being able to put a new septic system in, and the nitrates came back way too high. But when we purchased this property in 2013, because of the kind of loan that we had, they wanted us to cover up our hand dug well and dig a new well. And so we had an amazing well driller, and he's like, that well is amazing, that hand dug beautiful well that's been on this property since the 1800s. He's like, there's no way I'm filling that in. So he dug us a new well, tested it, and did not fill in the other one. So we are still hooked up to the old well. But now that we had to get that second well tested to see, because it goes down a lot deeper, if the nitrates were high in that one, and they came back really low. So we're considering hooking up to that one just for health purposes. But the levels came back. And so I said, so we can put a new septic system in, right? And he's like, no, you don't have enough land. And we have 3.5 acres. But there's so many rules and regulations when it comes to the state and what you can and cannot do on your land. And since we're putting a kitchen in down in the barn, and we are also putting in a short-term rental, which is like an Airbnb for people that come travel in and want to take a class, or people that are just traveling to our, like I said, we're in a very touristy area, that are traveling into our town. And since we're doing both of those, we need more land. And so we didn't get a definite no, but let me tell you guys, all of you that have been donating, have been purchasing shirts, all those links are down below. That has helped us tremendously just to get this ball rolling, because we had to get barn plans, which cost a couple $1,000s. And just this last test, the company came out and dropped this contraption way down into the well. It didn't take very long, but because they did that, and then they had to look at the geological, they had to do some geological surveys, it cost close to $1,000. I got the bill yesterday and I was like, oh my word, I was not expecting that. So this is just it. The Lord's taking us on this journey. I'm trusting His process. I'm trusting in if this is what He wants, then it will be. otherwise we're just going to keep teaching in that garage and just follow his leading. But I love when people gather on our farm and to be able to host people and teach them. But for us, I would love to be able to have more professional space that's not my kitchen all the time, and feeling the need to have it always like super clean, super spotless when people come over, because it can be stressful and it takes a toll on our family sometimes. But rambling, all that to say is thank you for all your support and your prayers, for following along with that, and I just wanted to kind of update you on that. So, all right, these are all filled, and I'm gonna fill them with water, and then I'm gonna mix them up.
Who's Ryan with his YouTube channel?
I don't know. Okay, there's a reason I'm using a metal spoon. I always get comments on, you can't use metal spoons in sourdough. I've been doing it for years and years. Even my friend who's going to be teaching our gluten-free sourdough class coming up in November, I'll leave the link below. Only 6 seats around the table for that one. My friend Roselle, she teaches, she's a chef, trained chef. She asked everyone to bring a metal bowl to make their dough. She uses, you know, all the things that people say you cannot use, she uses. And so I love to see that, because I don't know where, you know, we get these crazy ideas sometimes from other people on social media. You just got to do what works for you, including your health too. You know, one expert's going to say one thing, and then the another expert's going to kind of say the opposite. And so I think you just have to find what works for you in your kitchen and in your health. And so just like I did with this sourdough, you know, if you come to a class or you take my online course, you're going to learn, and then you're going to tweak it and make it your own, because, you know, everyone's, you know, humidity in their house is different. Everyone's oven is a little bit different, elevation. And so you just have to, you know, you have to find your rhythm, learn from others, take it and make it yours. So if you can see, this starter is super, super thick. But here is what day 2 looks like. It's like runny, right? It's inactive. And so that's why I always say start with a thicker starter, because it's just gonna keep getting runnier. All right, these are all mixed. I'm gonna put lids on them, and I'm gonna feed them again tomorrow morning, 4 hours before class, so they are ready to go, ready for all the students to come and learn how to care for a starter, learn how to make dough, learn how to make bread. And I think by now is that boiling, Hannah? Mm-hmm. My water's probably boiling, so I'm gonna get that started, and then...
No, it's not.
It's not yet? Okay. Can you turn it up just a tad? And then by then, we should be done with our morning things. I know some of the girls have already started school. Some are waiting for me. It's kind of a rhythm and a dance here, right? So much to do. But this is part of school, because this is part of life, right? All right. See the box? Okay, so it's time to add the tea bags. Hannah's gonna unwrap them. And I always use organic green tea, because organic is best, because tea is sprayed really heavily, and you don't want any of those chemicals in your kombucha, because it could just kill your SCOBY, and then you'll have to start all over. So you probably will ask, where do I even get a SCOBY? You can get some online. Different places online will sell them and ship them to you, but I highly suggest like checking with a health food store. Sometimes there's contacts that owner has, that they can, you know, reach out to someone in the community and say, hey, this person needs a SCOBY. I know our health food store has a bulletin board, and some people advertise those. Check Facebook Marketplace. I know in our area, people are always selling sourdough starters and, you know, different odd things. Check in some crunchy mom groups like I did, where my friend and I exchanged starter and kefir grains. So yeah, those are places, those are options. Last resort is definitely online. Always check local first. So she's gonna get these ready, and I'll show you how we kind of package them up and tie them up to add into our water. That makes it really easy for collecting when it's done brewing. So we're doing a double batch, so we have 12. Are you gonna put all 12 together? Yeah. So we just kind of put them all together. and then tie them in a bundle and clip off. Can you see those little tags, Hannah? We clip off the tags because those contain glue, sometimes staples, and I don't really want that in my kombucha because again, those chemicals could interfere with the fermentation and the brewing process and could essentially kill your SCOBY.
Do I cut off things first?
You can if you want to. I usually cut them off last. Do you need help? However you want to do it. Alright, so let's check our water. Our water is boiling. I like to let it boil for a little bit. It's not quite a rolling boil, but it's boiling. That just kills any pathogens in the water. And then from there, go ahead and add that in. Yep. Okay, can you turn the burner off? And I'm gonna let this brew for 15 minutes. And then after 15 minutes, I'll take those tea bags out. It's been a little bit more than 15 minutes because I got a little sidetracked. I'm gonna scoop all these out, throw them away, and then add my sugar. Okay, so I use just an organic cane sugar that I get at my health food store in bulk. I'm gonna add 4 cups, so each batch is 2 cups. 2, 3, 4. And you may be thinking, Sarah, that's a lot of sugar. It is a lot of sugar, but this is the food for the SCOBY, and the more sugar you add at the beginning, the better of a second ferment you're going to have when you add it to your bottles. When you add it to your swing top bottles, you let it ferment for like 3 days on the counter, making sure you burp it. And this is where you can add any fruit, or you can just add it to the swing top bottles plain. I think that's what I'm gonna do. The girls are really liking it plain, but that residual sugar is gonna carbonate it, and it's not going to be as sweet as you think it is. And the longer you actually let your kombucha ferment in the glass bottles, if you let it ferment for quite a long time, if it runs out of sugar to eat, it's gonna taste like apple cider vinegar, and it's gonna be very, very strong. And so that's why I like to add a little bit more sugar at the beginning, because then if I do forget about my kombucha sitting on the counter, or if my house is really hot, or if I have a lot of SCOBYs in that jar, it gives me a little bit more time to tend to them. And so you can taste your kombucha. My girls have been tasting it and they're like, this is perfect, this is perfect. Let's put it in the bottles. Can we drink it now? So you can go ahead and taste it just like any ferment. You know, if you're fermenting sauerkraut on the counter, you can taste it to see if it's at the perfect stage to, you know, put it away in jars, or, you know, if you want it to ferment a little bit longer. So same thing with kombucha, just try it, you know. Just be careful, like with contamination, just make sure your spoon is really, or your ladle, whatever you're using, is really clean. Sometimes I'll, you know, dip it in some white vinegar, make sure it's really clean. And the same thing with, you know, any jars that you're using, make sure they're very, very clean. So I'm gonna stir this, and you just want all the sugar to dissolve, and you're gonna let this cool to room temperature. And I let it cool, you know, somewhere maybe in like the fridge or a cool spot in my house, with the lid on, because we are in an old house, and so there are mold spores that we don't see. And I have had kombucha SCOBYs mold because I would leave this open, and then we don't see those mold spores, but they will take up residency on this tea. And then what happens is when you put that in with your SCOBY, it'll essentially kill your SCOBY. So I always keep a lid on this to cool. Okay, so the girls are doing school behind me. And while they're in their independent work, I'm gonna prep dinner. I cooked a roast 2 days ago in the crock pot. It was quite a busy day, so I just threw that in the crock pot, and then made some diced up tomatoes. Some days are busier than others, but I know, hot bucket. but I know having a nourishing meal on the table is really important. And then I like to take that, a lot of times I'll take a meal and I'll repurpose it and make another meal that will stretch. So I am taking, excuse me, this roast. There's a little bit left over with a little bit of broth. I'm adding some more broth. I'm gonna make, it's okay, you guys can do cool. So I'm gonna make a beef vegetable soup with a lot of the ingredients I already have on hand. So some extra onion in there, some cabbage. Cabbage is what makes vegetable soup like so good. So I add probably a half a head of cabbage, and then some, I had some beans in the freezer, some corn in the freezer, tomatoes, tomato sauce, and did I say extra broth? Yeah, extra broth. And then I'll throw that in there, and then I don't have to worry about dinner, and we'll have that tonight because I know the girls will be going hunting, or one of them will go hunting, and we'll probably be up in the garden tonight because it's supposed to rain all weekend. And I would like to get the sweet potatoes out and put them in the greenhouse to cure. Did I get that on you? I'm so sorry. Because sweet potatoes have to cure to get their skin so that they last all winter. And that is a staple crop. Sweet potatoes are a staple crop for us. We actually just finished the last one, I think like last month or just a couple weeks ago. It was a ginormous sweet potato and it fed all of us. And we just finished it and it was perfectly great. So we're ready to get those in the pantry for some yummy winter meals. So the start time is 4:38 and the end time is 8:10. Okay, so we could go, the next hour is going to be what? 5. Okay. And then this is really the C-O-N apostrophe T. This robot digs a big hole.
Period.
Nope.
A big
Your hand. Hole.
Sound on me?
Yeah, so you need 2 mils. I've been soaking in every drop of sunlight as much as I can. I feel like I'm inside a lot, just doing house things and teaching most days. But I love to get out as much as I can and soak up the beauty of our flower garden. We put this cut flower garden in the spring, and it's been the most, I think my favorite place. Hannah asked me, what's your favorite space on our property? And I automatically said the flower garden because it just makes me feel so good to cut flowers for our table, for when guests come over, and just to let people come and pick flowers from my garden when they come to visit or when they come take a class at folk school. So I'm going to cut some fresh flowers for the table and probably another bouquet for in the folk school room for tomorrow for all the guests that are coming, I should say students. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy this afternoon. I think tomorrow's supposed to rain and the dahlias are just calling. They're so beautiful. All right, I forgot how quickly the daylight fades in the fall, and so we decided we're not gonna pick sweet potatoes tonight, like the whole row anyway. We're gonna pick just a few to see how they're doing. I really wanted to get them out today because it's supposed to rain and next week's supposed to be cold. And sweet potatoes are a tuber, and they're a tropical tuber. They need to cure, unlike regular white potatoes. And so that means I need to get them in the greenhouse, but I know it'll be warm. We'll have some warm days yet. So we still have time. But where we dig out our sweet potatoes is where we put our garlic. And so that's imperative that we get that in before it gets too cold. So it's the race against the clock, race against the time, but it's also thrilling. So we're gonna dig up a sweet potato plant or two and show you what that looks like. That was rotten. Here's the start of it. Right here's the start of it. Awesome. Okay, so dig that, babe. And I'll dig it up and I'll pull it up. Oh my word! Look at that sweet potato. That's one that's gonna sustain us through winter, definitely. Any others? Oh, right there's one.
Yeah, that's good soil.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes you get these little tubers that haven't quite fully formed. We do save them and fry the whole thing in lard. They are so good. We call them, the girls call them Cheetos. So good. So make a pile of those. This is so fun. I don't know. Digging sweet potatoes is addicting because like once we start on one, we can't stop. And then we use all the vines as like weed barrier, and it decomposes over the winter. Do we put it on our garlic too, right?
Yeah.
We put it over the garlic and the chickens don't scratch it up and it
We
decomposes.
win the lottery.
We did.
Grab
Keep
the-
going, keep going.
Grab this.
Wait, there we go. Oh my word. You guys, this is amazing.
No, I
What?
got that one.
Oh my gosh, this is a whole sweet potato that was part of, oh my word, babe.
All right, the girl's got to be up here for this.
This was part of this and he cut it. But that'll be okay. It'll cure over and we'll be able, but look how ginormous that one sweet potato is.
I can't believe I cut
That
it.
is incredible. Okay, we need to get to work. It's a lot of sweet potatoes. We have 3 rows through here. So this may take us a couple days. So we're getting a start on it. Alright, it's about 7 o'clock. Yes, my love.
Marshmallow is at the end of the table.
Yeah, you can put them at the way end of the table. And I still have quite a few things to do. So I'm going to strain the rest of this kombucha off. The girls have been sipping on it throughout this week. So there's not much left, but I'm going to keep a little bit at the bottom. Remember, that's your starter. And this one too. I don't want to get that SCOBY in there. I'm going to keep that SCOBY in there in the jar. So I'm going to leave a little bit of starter left in this one. I actually might transfer this one. I'm going to transfer this one to a big mason jar. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep that in there. It's still very, very new. So I'm going to pour some fresh stuff on there and let that get a little bit thicker. Change of plans. And let's see. I can pour some more off of this one too. Ideally, you want to leave like a half a cup of starter kombucha in there from the last batch. So that looks like, let's see, that's about a cup. Let me pour some more off. Oh, you stay in there. All right, that's good. Now we're gonna put that tea that I brewed earlier today. It's cool. I'm gonna put that on top of here. And this, I'm gonna plug up.
Why is it leaking?
Is this one leaking? No, it just is leaking from, it was leaking out the side. So I'm gonna let this ferment on the
Like
counter.
beer.
It does kind of look like beer, doesn't it? Or wine, or champagne. I'm gonna let this ferment on the counter. The girls are probably gonna drink it before it even becomes fizzy. But you can see it's already,
It is already fizzy.
it's already a little fizzy. So by tomorrow morning when I pop this, it's probably gonna go shh. And you wanna burp this daily because if you don't, it's gonna explode. And no one wants exploding kombucha on their counter. I've had it happen. It's not fun. All right, let's finish this up. Did you want to get some dinner?
Well then.
Okay. All right, this is definitely room temperature. I'm just stirring it one more time to make sure all the sugar is incorporated so that it's equally divided between both jars. And then I'm going to pour that over the scobies and starter kombucha. And I have a complete fermenting guide on my website. I'll link that below that has all the recipes, the recipes for fermenting some of our favorite products, including kombucha, step-by-step ingredients, and the whole process that I shared with you today. And that's it. I'm gonna cover these while everyone gets dinner. That crock pot meal that I made earlier has made the kitchen smell amazing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I use a coffee filter to cover my jars. I always label, so I'll cross this one out and I'll label the date for this time so that I know when I brewed and when I, remade my batch of kombucha, and then I go from there. It's usually, so there's these scobies are really small, and so it'll probably take a good 14 days. But again, when you have a thick, the scobies will continue to grow. You'll get a layer and a layer and a layer. It'll kind of look like pond scum. That's what I like to think about it, pond scum. And then you'll know if it's moldy. Here, want some salt?
Thank you.
You're welcome. You'll know if it's moldy because it'll be fuzzy. Your scoby's gonna have different textures. There'll be like darker texture. There'll be a lighter texture. If it's moldy, it will be fuzzy. So I'm gonna label these with today's date, cross out the last one, and then like every 3 times I'll just rechange the coffee filters. So I have about like 2 or 3 on here, and that just allows like the flow of oxygen and carbon dioxide, but it doesn't allow any bacteria, pathogens, fruit flies, anything that's kind of lingering in your kitchen. So these will sit on my counter. I leave them out. I don't put them in like a closet, a cabinet. I don't use like tea towels to cover these. I've found that if I keep them in a closet or like in a cabinet, in a pantry, I just find that there's mold spores that linger in there. If I use any kind of tea towels, if they were musty, if they didn't get dried correctly, anything that could prohibit fermentation and inhibit mold growth, I don't want that. So coffee filters, that's my go-to. So just the brown, unbleached coffee filters. All right. Hey. right.
Stop. You don't know.
I do know, but I don't feel like talking about it right now. I don't like to talk much in the morning.